20 years ago, I stood just like this in front of an audience. I was asked to give a presentation to young college students. I was a young person then. But when I stood up to speak, somehow my mind remained seated. I couldn't speak. I was lost for words. I realized at that moment that I was not good at speaking in front of people. I hope I do a good job here. I decided from that moment that I was going to illustrate most of the things that I was going to present after that. I was a peer counselor working with PPAZ then. 1996 was a very difficult year for my siblings and I. Our mother was very ill. 3 years earlier, our father also passed away. It was difficult for me because my mother was a good friend. I was born when she was 17. We kind of grew up together, shared the same house and the neighborhood, obviously. And seeing her like that was very, very difficult. Each time the sun set, I got so nervous. I was so afraid going back to this small, dark room. It was dark not because of the power cuts, but we didn't have electricity then. And going back home and seeing my mother like that was so difficult. And coincidentally, that time, I was making these drawings with PPAZ. You can imagine as a young person then, a lot of things were going through my head. And unfortunately, one of them was suicide. I'm ashamed to say it, but unfortunately that was the case then. I kind of thought about how was I going to end it? How was it going to happen? Well, for some reason I decided, well, I wasn't going to do it. It wasn't worth it, you know. I had to be there. I'm the oldest of the six. So I had to step in and take care of the rest. So what happened was, each time I went back home, when I laid down to sleep, I constantly thought about, even when I decided I was not going to do it, I constantly thought about taking my own life. But I needed to find a distraction. And fortunately, I could draw, and I stayed up painting for a number of days, which resulted into months. And this is how, eventually, I accumulated a number of paintings, which someone saw and thought I was good. Well, my mother said that so many times. I never believed her. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to stand before you, not as a scientist, but as an artist. You have to understand, and I'm sure a lot of you would appreciate when I say mothers are special. Mine was extra special. I was growing up at a time when if you had to do art, you had to be in the last class. Obviously, no one wanted to be in the last class. You barely passed to go into secondary school. And art was not on my mind. Drawing was just one of the things you did. I knew I was good with my hands, but somehow, I started looking at it differently. You all agree with me when I said, this art thing, we need to look at it differently. A lot of people might not be fortunate as I was to have an amazing mother like mine, obviously, to encourage you despite the fact that art is looked at in a certain way. But I would like to show you some of the things I have done. I've not just painted pretty pictures, but I have painted my history, my past. I've sculpted my present and drawn my future. So I'm going to show you some of the fun stuff that I did, some paintings and drawings. That painting is called An Idiot's Guide to African Masks. This painting is basically talking about how we've made art. Our history has always, we've made objects, functional objects. We made a beautiful stool, we sat on it. So when you make a mask, it was for a ceremony. And when you exhibit in a museum out there, it's always placed out of context. So I've talked about stuff like this. I'm sure you all agree this is a nice painting. Yeah, this one is called Sent Someone. I'm going to run through some of it. And I've also painted cabbage. That's called Chinese cabbage. Not that I'm saying anything about economic colonization, no. This is an experiment I did with my daughter. She went to a Chinese school. You know, I'm proud. When I was growing up, there was no Chinese cabbage. We ate a lot of chihuahua and rape. I must say Chinese cabbage is better. Yeah, I think it's got nutritional values and better than rape. So, yeah, this is basically saying this is how plants absorb minerals and water. So the yellow one is copper Chinese cabbage, and the blue one is cobalt Chinese cabbage. That's literally, it's called kinakile. I made this work during my residency in Berlin. And what I'm doing here is asking you to look at it and ask questions. This is not just making art as a hobby. I'm asking questions. This is my present. There's the Chinese cabbage. And I'm also looking at archival material. We have a history, and I'm making work through this archival material. Here I'm talking about our future. I'm looking at Nkoloso in the 1960s, talked about going to the moon. I'm recreating this kind of work. I'm looking at his hope and aspirations as a freedom fighter, and his interpretation of what independence and freedom meant. And I'm trying to talk about that through my drawings and my paintings. I also made a spaceship with noodles. And behind the spaceship is the lunar celebrations. So what I want to talk about here is that, ladies and gentlemen, we must look at this art thing differently. I think the way we have looked at it as a country needs to change. It could literally save your life. I think it did with me. You know, it was just simple drawings, but it kept me awake for a long time. And I'm here to encourage parents to be nice, talk to your kids, even if it's in the last class. I don't know how it works now. I'm pretty sure it hasn't changed that much. That art is a tool for development. It goes beyond the pretty pictures that you see. We really need to redefine how we look at the art and the artist. I think with that short speech, I end here. Thank you very much.